Hi, welcome back to Home Time. Well, we've got the ingredients to transform a fairly ho-hum part of the yard into a really great looking patio with some raised planting beds, some benches. We're going to be mixing in some natural stone with pavers, a trick we've never done before, and a fire pit. The homeowners are Steve and Pam Jones. For Steve, the project's not that much of a stretch because he's been in the paver business for years. And even though it's pretty much just a big old yard right now, that means there's plenty of space to show everything Mr. Jones has in mind.
We have a beautiful place here and lots of land and stuff, and everything seems to be centered around the house right now, and this kind of moves that away a little bit.
It'll all come together on this show. I'll bet you'll find some ideas you can use in your own backyard. Stick around, see how it all turns out.
Look at this, Dean, air-conditioned skid loader.
The most important part of this area for me is to have a nice area to plant the vegetables in.
Pam has already told me that I've ruined her vegetable growing season, so the sooner I get this behind me, the sooner she might forget.
Well, Steve's been a buddy of ours for years. In fact, he's worked on a lot of our projects. First time we've worked on his yard, though, so it'll be kind of interesting to see what he's got cooked up.
We've already removed the planters. Once we get all the sod and the planting stuff out of here, we'll start excavating to get the base material in. Pam and I decided that this is kind of the basic design. The main area here is going to be concrete pavers. We've got a V-shaped three-tiered planter, and we'll incorporate a boulder right in the crotch area or the V area of the planter. Here we're going to be doing a round planter with a gazebo over the top. Somewhere over here we're going to end up with a fire pit with some seating benches around it. Once we get the pavers laid out, we're actually going to be setting in natural stone slabs. It'll help break up the continuous look of the pavers.
This area always looks kind of scuffy. The grass is always dry over here, and making it into more of a seating area, a play area for the dogs, and just overlook the pond will be very nice.
Well, once we get all the sod ripped off the top here, then we'll lay out exactly where the planting bed's going. If I know Steve, will probably be out there with a red spray can, laying out exactly where it's at so he doesn't have to over-excavate for the base.
Well, it's always good to get your layout done so that you really have a plan to work to. Since this is mostly freeform and there is no right angles, there's no perpendiculars or anything for us to worry about, we're going to go ahead and just freeform the entire perimeter of the patio.
I know at one point we're laying this out yesterday wondering how Steve's going to do it, and he says, well, one thing is I got to check with my wife, because like Judd always says, if mom is happy, everybody's happy.
It's not a bad soil here, so the excavation we'll be looking to do about 6 inches of base, so it'll be a total of 9 inches of excavation. Drainage is always the biggest issue with any kind of pavement, so we want to make sure that we have a minimum 2% grade to make sure it sheds water properly.
Well, a couple things that had to be done here before they're ready for base. One is a little bit of a surprise. There was a concrete ledge sticking out here underneath this patio, so they scored the top of that and busted that off. Another thing they want to do, they've snapped a chalk line. They're going to cut this edge of the driveway right here so that it lines up with the existing paver patio.
Nice job, Steve. Hey, they had to know they couldn't keep me out of these toys today. We got this sweet dump truck, big aluminum box, Steve running a state-of-the-art skid loader, laser levels. I'm in heaven, baby.
Okay, we've got everything excavated. Now we're ready to move on to the base. Now, one thing I know about Steve, he totally believes in a good firm foundations for these patios. So putting in a good base is something he's not going to gloss over.
We like to use a woven geotextile fabric. That material really helps spread any uneven loads you may get from the subgrade during freeze-thaw conditions or any unexpected load. As you put multiple pieces of geotextile together, you want to make sure that you shingle it or overlap a minimum of 12 to 18 inches because that's what continues the transfer of load.
We're using 3/4 minus for the base. We're spreading it out right now just to hold down the fabric. Once we get this intact and in place, then we can start spreading this out evenly throughout the whole area.
It's a crushed limestone. It's got fines and materials up to about 3/4 of an inch. What that does is it binds together really nice. The one thing it's going to require us to do in this very hot and sunny day is that we're going to have to add a lot of moisture to it in order to get it to compact properly.
Now once they get the base spread out, they want to double check to make sure they're pretty close to where they want to be. So to determine that, they put these stakes around the perimeter. They have these little collar ties that represent 12 inches above where that final patio level should be. So to determine where the grade is at, they measure down 12 inches plus 3 inches for the width of the paver, string some lines. Back on the back side there, they're probably just a little high, so they're going to scrape some of that off. Up here in front there, they're pretty darn close. Now you want to compact the base so you get a nice strong foundation for the patio. and it levels everything else, so we're all ready for the pavers.
Compaction is probably the single most important process in putting a segmental pavement together. It's the foundation, it's what everything's built on. It's important to make sure that during the compaction process that you're raking down the high spots and filling in the low spots as you compact, just to make sure that you're getting uniform compaction and you maintain that that initial grade you got with either the rakes or the bobcat.
Well, things are well underway now. We'll let them wrap up this part of the operation, then we'll be back to start working on planting beds and benches.
Some details in this are a little bit more intricate, but pretty much this is a pretty standard fare for a retaining wall project.
All right, most of the base is set, ready to go for our paver patio. But before we get to actual pavers, we're going to raise some planting beds with some retaining wall block. Now this area here has been set a little bit lower and pretty much flat for that.
There are a couple of points that we're going to have to make sure that get consistent. We've got a couple of walls that are paralleling one another, so it'll be real important to make sure that those are parallel and also level in the same plane to one another as well.
We are huge believers in using edge restraints to help keep a paver patio locked into position. But Steve also recommends using edging to help hold a retaining wall in place while you are stacking the stones on top.
It actually reduces the amount of excavation and base preparation necessary for the retaining wall. Again, it saves a lot of material too, because it requires you to bury less of the material below visible grade. So it does save time, it saves money, and it's quicker.
Now what we're using is a concrete retaining wall block, which has been given a tumbled or weathered look on the exposed edges to give it the look of natural stone. Now, they're about half the size of your typical unit, but they are still 41 pounds, so they're nice and heavy for applications like garden walls and retaining walls. They're also pre-grooved and drilled so that you can put them in a variety of configurations, which you'll see in a little bit here as we start to lay the stones.
We chose this material because it is easy to work with. It's small enough for us to do all the design features we want, and the fact that it's a solid block gives us a lot of ability to cut and fit pieces to make it look really nice.
Now Jay likes to start in the corner and work his way around. Ready? So that's what he's recommending here. Now with any retaining wall that we've ever done, you know, the first course is always going to take the longest because you need to make sure that every single stone is perfectly level and straight, otherwise you're going to run into problems later on.
We start in the corner of a project because it makes things a little bit easier. This will be a fixed point for us now. You normally start in the lowest portion of your wall and also in any corners. We've split a standard Versalock block in half to give two textured faces, an 8-inch side and a 12-inch face. In addition to the Class 5 base, we also are using a little bit of washed concrete sand as a skim coat, if you will, to aid and speed up our basing operations. It's very thin. We just spread it out very thin to take care of any low and high spots.
Well, the first bed we had multiple corners, but here no corners at all, just one big circle. Now with the blocks cut narrower in the back than they are in the front, it makes it pretty easy to get the right radius.
The base course is the number one part of the job. You want it just perfect. You want them level, tight, and if it isn't right, you'll hear it.
Now once the first course is set, we can go ahead and continue with the second course. It starts in the corner. There you go. And it goes kind of in an interlocking or weaving pattern. Now I noticed you're putting a little bit of glue on this corner piece, Jay.
Yep, and the reason we're doing that is this is a top-down pinning system, and these corner units, we don't have any slots up here to be able to pin to. So we're going to go ahead and use some good quality, flexible concrete adhesive to hold those in place.
Once you get the base course in, the second, third, and fourth, or however many courses you're going to go, they fly. And that's when you see the progress happening.
With some prodding, the homeowner liked the idea of incorporating some natural stone into an otherwise concrete jungle, if you will. We've got a concrete retaining wall, concrete pavers are going to go in. So adding some natural stone is going to give it some real interest and make it really unique.
Now I have a 3/4 of an inch setback here, which means that each course is going to get shorter by 3/4 of an inch on both sides. So full piece isn't going to fit here, Jay. So what do you have for that?
To fill that space, we are going to cut a slug, which is just a piece of another block, at least 4 inches wide to be able to fill that space.
This is a really slick system. To achieve our 3/4 setback, you take these little pins, drop them in these holes on the top of the block, give them a tap, they pop in, automatically set your 3/4 back, you just keep on going.
All right, the system we're using comes with a really good looking cap piece. And generally we wait till everything is done before we start working on that. But since the round bed is all finished and every other piece needs a couple cuts, we're going ahead and starting on that.
We cut both sides of every other cap, which gives it a much better look than trying to cut one side of every cap. It's mainly for aesthetics more than anything else.
Well, that's pretty much the story with the planting beds. A little more work yet to do here, and then we'll get started on those pavers.
The biggest trick to setting this stuff is making dang sure Steve is happy.
Pam's happy, therefore I'm happy, everyone's happy.
Okay, we've got all the planting beds done here. The guys have had a chance to come in and lay down some more base here to cover up the edging that holds the retaining wall block in place. Over here there's a couple of curved freestanding walls. This will serve as seating around the fire pit area. And they've got some of the sand down now, the edging's all in place, and they're starting to lay some pavers.
Well, it's important to put the edging in ahead of time, especially if you have a lot of complex curves like we do on this project. It just allows you to frame the job.
All right, moving on to the sand process. You need a good inch of bedding sand, screed it out nice and smooth to set your pavers on. Now the best way to do this is just dump a bunch of sand right over the base, spread it out, and run your screed over a couple of 1-inch pipes to achieve the proper height. For the patio, we're using concrete pavers. Now these are formed and tumbled to give them kind of an old world look once everything's put together. We're using 4 different sizes, a 4x6, a 3x6, Lenny likes calling these Twinkies, a 6x6, and a 6x9. Now because we are using quite a few different sizes, we can go with a lot of different patterns. And you can go to the manufacturer's website, they have them all laid out. Some are fairly straightforward, for instance like a herringbone, this only uses one. Or you can go with something that looks totally random. Here they're using 3 different sizes, or something like this one. Now what's great about this is you apply the square footage from your patio to this pattern and it will calculate exactly how many you need of each size. So it makes it really pretty simple. The new concrete pavers are going to butt up against the old clay brick pavers. We could do it along the old original line, but I think that would look a little harsh. So Steve has some of these pavers left over. He's going to extend the patio out a little bit and then do more of a natural curve break. I think it's going to look a lot nicer.
Because of the features of this, the curved benches and some of the other features, felt it was important during the transition rather than have a straight line is to provide a curve. I think that'll make for a much gentler transition from the clay to the concrete.
All right, the new concrete pavers will have a soldier course running right next to the soldier course of the brick pavers. Logical spot to start? Well, not really, because the guys want to make certain that our pattern, even though it's very random, runs perfectly parallel to the cut in the driveway. So what they've done, snapped a chalk line over here, another chalk line perpendicular to that. They'll start laying the pavers out there in that area. And then they'll start working off of that. This way, when they're done, they know that everything will be running perfectly parallel. They don't have to worry about anything drifting on them.
Probably the biggest don't do is rush it. When you're laying the pavers, bond lines are absolutely critical. Snapping chalk lines, running string lines, these are very important. Too many times people are more worried about getting product down than they are worried about moving ahead in an organized fashion. And it's really not a speed race.
As we mentioned before, there are patterns available. Now Bob's done this quite a bit. He's not worried about using one of those patterns, so he's just doing something totally random.
It's not hard to do random. You try not to think about it. The important things are you don't use too many of one size, otherwise you run out and have to order more. Delays the job. Also, you gotta be careful that we don't have too long bond lines. These continuous bond lines need to be broken up. Really shouldn't extend more than 5-6 feet.
My 3 unfavorite words in the world are click and drop. It's a problem when we have homeowners and contractors hearing that term because they click, upset the bond pattern of the pavers around them, and then they drop them in the sand, which displaces sand. So they end by the time they're finished, they have a very uneven surface, and the bond patterns are spread all over in heck. So really, the best paver laying guys I have ever seen are guys with perfect finesse.
So if you've heard the term click and drop, forget it. This is all about finesse. Do pavers just the way Bob does. You have a nice tight paver patio. Well, a few more pavers to go here, and we're on to our last finishing touches.
Well, so far, it's been a lot of hardscaping down at Pam and Steve's new patio, and even though it's a little late in the year for planting everything in the new raised beds, they thought it would be really nice to add a water feature of some sort here. Well, one option would be to set up a water garden with a pond liner, a waterfall, and a pump. Wouldn't be that hard to dig out and set up. You got everything you need right here, but I know that what Pam and Steve are thinking about actually will sit on top of the pavers and not in the ground. And that's where they got the idea of a fountain. Now it's great because a fountain comes everything you need in a box. It looks like concrete, but it's made with actually a lighter resin material. But the only thing is they wanted something a little bit bigger than what they have here. So they went online and they found this urn pool, which is about 3 feet high and weighs about 85 pounds. But like the smaller ones, it all comes in a box. As they say, some assembly is required. It's pretty easy though. The first step is laying out the PVC liner where you want to position the fountain. The liner serves as the bottom of the fountain, but once you pump it up, it also forms the sides. You set the water pump right in the middle of the liner, and there's a decorative surround that you set over the sides. It comes in 4 pieces, which you put in one at a time and line up over the sides. The upright portion comes in 3 pieces, with the water supply tube run up through the middle piece, which looks like an urn. Turn the urn upside down and you can attach the base, which locks into the bottom of the urn with a little twist. You set the base and the urn right over the pump and connect the supply tube to the pump. Then you can set the top piece in the urn and lock that in place. Now you're ready for water. It's a recycling pump, so you just fill up the pond liner from a garden hose, one time only except for spillage or evaporation. Plug in the power cord, and the pump sends water up to the urn. It takes a little while for that to fill up, but once it does, it spills back down into the pond liner. And before you know it, you've got yourself an instant water feature complete with the relaxing sound of a gurgling fountain. The beauty of it is, once it gets too cold outside, you can literally take the fountain apart and set it up inside and enjoy the fountain all winter long. So, with the water feature all taken care of, just a couple more things to wrap this project up. Well, it's been a busy couple days here finishing up the patio with our pavers and a few interesting features. One of the things we've done is we've put this natural stone here in front of our round planter and then accented this with single stone pieces scattered throughout the patio, cut right into our paver pattern. The way to do that is to first set the pavers in place and set the stone right over the pavers. You can then mark the outline of the stone on top of the pavers, carefully pull them out of place, making sure you mark each one so you know where it goes. Cut those according to the marks on each one, reset the pavers, add a little sand or base to accommodate any difference in thickness, and then set the stone in place. After that, there are just a couple more steps to wrap things up. Like sanding the joints between the pavers. That's a critical step in creating a monolithic surface with interlocking pavers. You sweep the sand over the joints with a broom, run a plate compactor over the pavers to vibrate the sand into the joints, and then you repeat it as needed to fill the joints with sand and lock the pavers in place. We also spread topsoil or black dirt over the back side of the paver edging. That way grass can grow right over the edging and fill in where the lawn was cut back during the excavation. And we set the steel gazebo in place over the rounded planting bed to finish the hardscaping. Perfect. So with the fountain up and running, the only thing left to do is to put some nice plantings in these raised beds. And I know Pam will be doing that soon, so other than that, this job is done. We started the show with a fairly nondescript patch of lawn bordered by trees, pavement, and a tool shed. Not really much to catch your eye. But now we've blended a new tumbled paver patio with the existing clay brick apron, added raised planting beds with retaining wall block, worked in natural stone with pavers, and created a fire pit by cutting a metal fire ring into the pavers and lined the outside edge with a circle kit of matching pavers.
This is so much better than what we had before. I mean, it's cleaner, it's easier, and we can have a place to sit and have a fire when it gets cooler out.
The single neatest element that we introduced was finding that one rock over there for the retaining walls, because that thing, it blends with the color, it blends with the texture of the retaining wall, and it helps tie it all into the pavers in front of it. I think that's probably the single neatest feature of this patio.
So we'd like to thank Steve, Pam, and the crew for letting us jump in on a patio project with some interesting features we've never had a chance to try before. We're on to a new project, so till then I hope you can join us. I'm Miriam Johnson. Thanks for watching. There you go.